Fantastic. Everyone, welcome to AvePoint's Point-CounterPoint. My name is Rick Taylor. I'm a strategic advisor with the Client Services Division, and I have with me John Peluso and Christian Buckley. And this webinar will be about going back and forth on the discussion of on-premises versus cloud, and introducing a study by Christian Buckley talking about the hybrid SharePoint. So I'd like to let John and Christian introduce themselves. John, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is John Peluso. I'm a Senior Vice President of Product Strategy here at AvePoint and was recently named a Microsoft Regional Director, which doesn't mean I'm a Regional Director, nor does it mean I work for Microsoft, but it's a great honor nonetheless.
It's an excellent honor.
It is really, really cool.
Congrats on that again, John.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And Christian.
Yeah, so my name is Christian Buckley. I've been a long-time evangelist. I just left a chief marketing officer role with another ISV, but I'm a 6-time SharePoint MVP and co-founder and CEO of CollabTalk LLC. And CollabTalk's been around the space for a few years. We are an independent research and technical marketing services company, and our new founding of launch of this year. And I think what helped spark some of this conversation, our most recent project, of course, was the study on the state of the hybrid SharePoint ecosystem, which was sponsored by Microsoft and by AvePoint and several of the other leading Microsoft partners.
Excellent. Thank you so much. A little bit of history. Christian and I actually used to work at Microsoft together for the original
beginning
Office 365.
Right.
Yeah, the old BPOS.
It was, well, prior to that, MMS.
Oh yeah,
Microsoft
MMS.
Managed
That's
Solutions,
correct. Yeah,
which,
prior to BPOS.
Then got rebranded as BPOS, or Business Productivity Online Services, and then that got rebranded in, I think it was 2008.
I don't know, man. I don't know anybody that would put a BPOS T-shirt on that didn't absolutely have to. So.
Hey, BPOS was that rocked, man. I love that. All right.
Yeah, not me. I was not a fan, but that's a longer discussion. But yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we want to get started here. We've got a few topics here. So for those who are not familiar with the old news TV, there was a TV show. It was called Point-CounterPoint on CBS. It was prior to 60 Minutes, and we would. The program would take 1 point, and then someone would take the complete opposite point, and they would go ahead and they'd argue back and forth and do a verbal beatdown on everyone. We're not going to do any verbal beatdowns here.
Well,
but
maybe.
But
the night is young.
That's true. We'd like to open this up here for our first topic of status of on-prem versus the cloud, and where are we going to where's all this technology headed? Now, for me, being a consultant, I go out there, I face the clients all the time, and when we try to pitch cloud, we are met with an amount of resistance that is just, they will not listen whatsoever. And being the trusted advisor, I take their points very seriously. I take their fears, and I don't even try to resolve them. If they want to stay on premises, then hey, let's stay on premises. I like that because I get all the control I want. If I want to patch, I can patch when I want to. I can determine when my upgrade schedule is. I think it's fantastic. Now, I do understand that there are some pros, and I'm going to let John talk to those, but, try to convince me why I should go on premises, John.
Well, I'm gonna do a difficult task. I'm gonna try to convince you, and one of my arguments is going to be enhanced productivity. Now, given that there's in previous of our presentations and so forth, one of the things we covered was there's so much productivity in Office 365, so many tools that sometimes it's difficult to actually figure out what you're doing. So let's put that aside for half a minute, and let me go way back to the beginnings of SharePoint. I go back to the 2003 days of SharePoint. That was my first implementation, and I remember doing seminars and sort of envisioning sessions for businesses where we said, hey, you guys are deploying Office. Check out this new technology. It's super valuable. Remember the Office servers when that first came out?
Oh, yeah.
This was really cool, right? Well, there's a whole now server component to Office, and SharePoint was one of those. And every one of those guys couldn't care. They said, wait a minute, it's bad enough they want me to roll out Office every 3 years. You think I'm going to do this too? Forget about it. 6 months later, 8 months later, 12 months later, every one of those guys was in my training center because the business had demanded SharePoint. So I don't think that this is a question of whether we want to have what the cloud is offering or not. So two things on that front. Number one, if the organization from an IT perspective is taking the position that they're never going to go to the cloud, it's going to happen whether they know it or not. So people are going to go to the cloud.
And the likelihood is that they're already on their way.
Absolutely.
And their employees are just not. If they've got that attitude, their employees are probably not telling them what they're doing. It's that whole rogue IT movement, the shadow IT that we do see happening.
Right. Right. And
now,
and
I've worked with some government clients, and they're like, you know what? We're not doing that. Yeah. I've worked with a couple of federal agencies that are saying, you know what? They put their foot down. And I understand what they're saying. I mean, I really do. And I feel for them, and I do see their point. So when you say that, you know, they're going to go there eventually, really?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that and part of this, right, part of this is the prejudice of the world you live in, right? So part of the world that I live in is, you know, out there, and I do a fair amount of cloud business and consultation with our customers. So I'm probably a little bit more tilted towards that. But I can just look at the past 3 or 4 years. And, you know, large customers. I sat in a large global financial, and the guy said to me, look, I can't go. I can't go because they don't have this, and this. But the second I can go, I'm going. Because why do I want to worry about running the plumbing and keeping the electricity on? That's not my business. I was at a seminar last week with global financial sort of CISOs and CIOs. And as you can imagine, SaaS was a big topic. And one after another came up to me. And these are guys that had done very successful, you know, organizations that were super capable at running IT services. And they said, I'm not in the IT services business. Why would I be? Why would I put the effort in? Can we do it? Sure. Can we be good at it? Sure. But why would we want to be? That doesn't make us money.
Well, I mean, the bigger question, though, we started with, like, what is the state? I mean, where are we moving with this? I mean, the reality is that, and I think this is a perfect example of everyone's favorite answer to any question about SharePoint is, well, it depends. You know, whether you can or can't, should or shouldn't move those things across, what assets, what workloads, what data to move across. The reality is that it is happening. It's underway. It's a lot slower than Microsoft thought initially. I think they've really, what's changed here in the last couple of years, and even with the latest, it's not just this hybrid SharePoint study that my team put out, but also Microsoft just released a 6-month study of a cloud adoption, cloud readiness research project, and that data showed again that it's, you know, it's slower than Microsoft predicted around that, because a lot of the things which we'll talk about here in a few minutes, I'm sure, there are some things that are more difficult, and that there are valid reasons for some customers to move across. But John, I agree with you that there are, you know, the most of the customer conversations I'm having are much along the same way, saying right now we don't see it because we're stuck by these requirements.
There are blockers, right? Yeah.
Right. There are those blockers. There are other organizations that they may say, well, we just don't think is that secure. And some of those, the reality of the security you know, issues versus, you know, the perceptions there, I think some ways sometimes that falls away when you really dig in and understand what they're trying to do. And then you find out, oh, they already have all of their Exchange servers are out in the cloud already. That they're using cloud-based CRM or ERP solutions. I mean, there's a lot of other things that are out there where you know, I think of the old Palmolive ads, like you're already soaking in it, you know.
Right.
Do you guys still
now
see
see?
that?
But that that's a perfect example. That Palmolive, Madge, the lady, immediately put that lady's hand in the dishwashing soap.
That's
Now,
what we got to do.
That was her strategy, right? She didn't even let them know. So there's this like secret thing going on.
This is starting to sound even more like Office 365. I woke up today and it has like 100 groups.
And your hand was in it. That's right.
That's it.
You didn't even know it. You didn't even know it. So is this a full-on strategy, or is this just something that's going to happen organically?
Well, one thing that's clear is that no millennial is going to understand what we're talking about, but they're going to have to go look this up. But just
let's be honest. I don't think that was our audience anyway.
Yeah, but it's so. I'm just to wrap up that, and I think that's a good transition too. But what part of our study and going look at again just the SharePoint portion of it, not being diluting the data with those that are in hybrid because they're doing Exchange. This is specifically looking at SharePoint. We're based on the number of environments that are for organizations today. It's about a $10 billion ecosystem today. It's our best number, public numbers out of Microsoft. The portion that is organizations that are doing hybrid solutions is about $3.2 billion. In the next 3 years, the size of that pie gets larger. We're estimating $5.3 billion. So what's happening is that the largest portion, going from today, about a third to almost half to 46% of all environments will be hybrid in the next 3 years. We're very confident in that number.
Yeah. So, Christian, one of the things that I was interested in that study was the large number of folks that are still on SharePoint 2010. It looked like there was a significant number. I think it was somewhere around 28% that were still on SharePoint 2010.
In addition to running other versions, right? I mean, the average number of versions of people running it's still like almost 3. It's like 2.8 versions.
Right,
so.
right. So I mean, what do we infer from that, right? Are people taking a wait and see attitude? Is that a bombed out, no longer business critical, SharePoint deployment that's just laying there? What do we think? Because that really is in part, going to be a signal for what's going forward. If people are going hybrid, the best practice advice, right, is to be at minimum up to SharePoint 2013. 2016 even better, right? So if you show me customers on 2013, 2016, that's a commitment to hybrid as far as I'm concerned, because those are the platforms you got to get to. Do you guys agree?
I had a customer that was still on SharePoint 2007. Actually, I take that back. They were using WSS 3.0.
Nice.
So when the topic went to, when would you like to go to the cloud? When would you like to go to SharePoint Online? Oh, let me tell you, that just opened up a whole can of worms right there. They're like, wait a minute, we know what we have. And I think a lot of it has to do with the unknown. Okay, once I go up to the cloud, what can I expect? Hybrid still lets me keep my foot on solid ground, so to speak, and the other foot in the cloud.
Yeah, but to your point, John, though, that if you're look, 2007, there's very limited capabilities from the officially supported hybrid solution. So I'd say 2007, you're a little bit more limited. There are options with 2010, and that's been around for a while. Single sign-on, of course, the federated search capability, and there's a few other things as well. But when you look at it differently, where it becomes more of a data store around those things. I mean, back to your original question is, that you have a customer still on that ancient system, probably because they went and have customizations that work, that serve their business needs, and still provide value. So why go and break that thing?
That's exactly the point. Exactly.
Yep. But then on the other side of that is to have a conversation about, well, what that really is. And to go and flesh out, well, does the cloud now have, and out of the box, can you do 80%? Like at what point, what functionality from your custom solution is missing that you can't accomplish or out of the box or configure? And there may be plenty of other reasons, and that's why it's a valid strategy for hybrid to keep those systems, those workloads that need to remain there for all of those reasons that are valid, yet still be able to access that data. Maybe it's just indexing it and it's just that it's searchable and available, but the end user just doesn't know, like I'm seeing content that's on this old environment or out in the cloud. They don't care. They just want to go to one place, search, and find it.
Yeah, so quick question for both of you guys. I'm curious as to how you'll answer this. Is your experience that most people love their SharePoint?
I think they have a love-hate relationship. They
so
love
much,
to hate
there's
it.
so much within that pause there. Right?
Yeah. That's what we call a pregnant pause.
Yes, yeah.
I have something that I really hate, but I have to have it.
Right. Whoa, ouch. Wait a minute.
I love it. Personally, when SharePoint 2003 came out, I deployed it in my house. I had an on-premises Exchange server, I had a domain controller, I had SharePoint. And that was because my kids who were in school, and I traveled a lot, and so I had their homework inside SharePoint. They could, and my kids have learned how to, get email and access the web since they could read. And so it was easy for me to check in, check out their homework, and do it while I was on the road. So I love SharePoint, especially on premises, because I've got all the control. So do you love your SharePoint? Maybe I'm the outlier. I love every bit of it. Everything about SharePoint I love.
So I think you know what? And I'm not even. The question wasn't even intended to ask, do you love SharePoint? It was, do you love your SharePoint? And I think that's the key, right? Because, and again, part of this is the prejudice of perspective, right? But I think a lot of customers that we deal with, it's a given, right? The natural tendency of any SharePoint deployment is towards chaos, right? That we know that it is chaos theory at its
we
best,
all go to
right?
entropy. That's correct.
Yeah. So I think maybe if we get back to the idea of hybrid, not as something you're held hostage to, but a customer saying, hey, I'm going to be hybrid because I really, really want my on-premise. Christian, you mentioned before some of the common scenarios that we all know, right? So some people are going to be stuck there because they've got customizations. The guy died, the guy left, who knows how it's built, right? They don't want to reinvest. And so they'll be stuck with some full trust code on-prem and some customizations that maybe they serve a really important purpose in the business. I wouldn't necessarily say that in my world of thinking about a strategy, I mean, that's good. I'll be able to connect to what's new. But if we talk strategy, I think we also have to look at the other side of it, right? There's the business's reality, but what is the user's reality? What is the experience of a user in hybrid? Do any of us feel that the hybrid experience of a user, the way we can do it today, is going to be seamless and not confusing? Well, that's somewhat not fair because just being in Office 365 can be confusing. But now we're navigating across different places. Where do I create something? Where do I go? Where is this stuff stored? Where do I have to check? How come this screen looks different than this? And when I go to this library, it looks different than this.
Why you need to go in there. You can't just go and say, hey, we now hooked in and you can access all of these old sites. And look, you have to have a plan. You have to have a strategy and understand, hey, look, here's where some of the trade-offs might be. And it might be that you go down as part of this strategy that, look, there are team sites that are out there that have these customizations that are these primary workloads. These teams for these use cases rely on these sites, and that's why we're keeping the on-prem environment where it is. Or there might be terabytes or petabytes of information that are behind those processes, and it makes sense to keep it there. And maybe there's concern about security. I mean, whatever the reasons are for that. But you're right. You have to then go look at, well, what's the best path forward? And I think that there's plenty of guidance that's out there through partners, through Fast Track as well, that say, well, in that kind of scenario, there are certain best practices for going and created that federated, that search experience, so that all net new team sites that are developed are done in the cloud. You're not going and creating net new sites, locations, environments off of that old infrastructure, but just using it more, accessing it for those workloads. But that's something that you need to think about thoughtfully, carefully, go and plan out, so that you can build that environment in a way that's going to be pleasing to the end user. Because I think that has been a mistake of SharePoint organizations all along. It is a strong, I'd say, a win in the online side of things, is because the user experience is greatly improved.
Yeah.
And so you want to have that superior user experience, and that out of the box give end users that rich user experience, so that they're going to want to come and not just go there to drop off their files and have a very expensive file share in SharePoint, but that they're actually getting work done within that system.
Yeah.
So that's been the appeal of a lot of these cloud-based, these other competing technologies, and why Microsoft went in and said, we need to fix this. We need to go add more, innovate more, come up with these end-to-end solutions or experiences, but have also now realized over the last couple of years, with all of the pushback from these organizations that did spend countless hours and people and revenues, building out SharePoint on-prem, that they need to be able to continue to get value out of those systems as well. So you have to look at those trade-offs and make some decisions.
So what I'm hearing, Christian, and I think I totally agree, it's be deliberate, right? Be deliberate about how you approach the concept of hybrid, and not just, hey, I'm going to build a bridge between the two, and that's a hybrid deployment. Hybrid deployment's got to be deliberate in terms of, there are things that happen here, there are things that happen here, and this is how we're going to enable that work and collaboration to happen in the way that we want. So I think I totally agree with that. The other thing that I was sitting here thinking as you were talking was, the tendency when we talk about a quote-unquote hybrid deployment, it's kind of a misnomer. It is not a hybrid deployment. It is two deployments with a bridge between them. And
Correct.
it's a more honest way of approaching it, because, as we've discussed, privately, these are two different products. SharePoint Online and SharePoint On-Prem, even though they're both SharePoint, they are different products. They behave differently. They act differently. They can be sort of used differently. Right? They're understood by the user differently.
You're also administering two separate systems.
Yep.
So if you want to go run a report that you are required, you're the admin of, you're the owner of SharePoint, you're running it off of two different systems, and all that, the data may not align. So you have to rethink just how you build your dashboards to report to your executive team.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah, I totally get with that. And so we're coming up on our time limit here, but what I'd like to do is kind of switch the topic here to some use cases for hybrid. I know we talked a little bit about that, but why convince me, right, the on-premises guy, of a situation, using a situation where, you need to use hybrid because, and then fill in the blank.
Yeah, so I'm going to cheat, right? So because I'm taking the Office 365 perspective, I don't have to just decide on a use case for SharePoint. I can decide on any use case across all of Office 365, right? So the one thing that I think it's important to recognize is that, if we all remember the SharePoint sort of pie slide that was presented time and time again, SharePoint on-prem was trying to be a collaboration system, a social system, a data intelligence and business intelligence system, a file repository. It was trying to be all of those things. And online, it doesn't need to be. We can offload, for example, the idea of where do I do my work management and my tasks. I don't have to rely on users to take the stock task list, build it out, customize it, add metadata, and turn it into something they can use, right? They have a ready-made, easy, simple interface and planner they can use. Same thing with Teams, right? Teams and chats and so forth. So the use cases that I would say is think about the collaboration strategies that your organization have and decide where to put those workloads. Very likely, if you're in a hybrid organization, the majority of your net new collaboration should be happening in Office 365. The tools are there. It's quicker, it's easier for the users, and it's more modern. Yes, you'll still have legacy file repositories. Yes, you'll still have legacy applications that are running there in SharePoint. We have in AvePoint, I mean, we have a hybrid deployment. We're heavily invested in Office 365, but there's still some SharePoint 13 hanging around and some SharePoint 07 hanging around. I know that every time I get an expense reports to fill out, I'm going to have to go to SharePoint 2007, but that's the only workload still running on that server. So I think that the question is to just place those workloads, right? Understand what types of collaboration and plan for it, because you're going to have to guide the users there.
Yeah, and I think that kind of the same thing. I don't know like a specific like customer use cases, because again, it's that whole it depends thing. But look, there are certain realities of organizations these days is that increasingly we are geographically dispersed. That is a strong a nod towards considering the cloud, of looking at the new functionality, as John said, the better user experience. I mean, all of those things. But then the reasons, like you want all of those things, but then you also, the reasons for having a hybrid solution there would be that you want to access those legacy systems, that you may have some intellectual property sitting in one location, and that the security requirements or the customers that you're working with are such that you are not able to yet at this stage move it over to these other environments. Maybe you are legally required to hold on to that. I mean, you look at some countries, and I'm thinking of Germany, it's like there are strict legal requirements. Whether or not the companies are willing to put things out in the cloud, it's not even an option if there are these restrictions that are there. And yet, do you deny your end users the new functionality, the better improved usability, the user experience, all of those things, which again comes back to, well, what's the best of both worlds is hybrid. Go and meet those requirements while taking advantage of the new. That's what hybrid allows you to go and do. Is it hard? Yes. Are there a lot of other things that you need to do, a lot of other additional overhead administration for that? Yes, there are. It's why you need to be very thoughtful and on those decisions. But it's why the majority of organizations who have been longtime SharePoint shops are considering hybrid as their strategy, because it's allowing them to kind of straddle both sides of the argument and get what they need done while still adhering to their strict requirements.
So Christian, you're reminding me of something I say all the time. You can have cake and pie, but you're going to have twice as many dishes.
Exactly.
All right.
Wow. That's deep.
Boom.
That's like a cowbell moment right there.
Yeah. So, Christian, you discussed this in your report. I'd love to give a plug there. It's downloadable, correct?
It is. So you can get it. So I don't know if it rolls off the tongue. I know it'll be in the resources here for this, but AvePoint has that, so you can get it from that site. And of course, if you go to CollabTalk.com, my site, you'll be able to find a link as well.
Fantastic. I would highly recommend everyone getting a copy of that. It is available at www.avepoint.com/hybrid-study, and you can go ahead, download that, and take a gander at that. There's a lot of prescriptive advice there. It's an excellent piece of reading material. It's not light reading, I will tell you that right off.
There's a little bit of data in there, yes.
It is not light reading, but yes. So we would love to have everybody get a copy of that, as well as talking about, we'll be talking with you soon again, right, with Bill Bear.
Yeah, so we've got a webinar happening, and then we're going to do another podcast, and we're going to get into it again. I'm not sure which side of the fence, if the point-counterpoint is going to be with Bill. I think we're all just going to be in agreement.
That will definitely be a verbal beatdown. Another thing about David, Bill was my office mate at Microsoft when over at BPOS. So so we love to have our little parlay. But that will be May 24th at 1400 Eastern Time or 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're looking forward to having everyone attend that. But right now, I'd love to thank John and Christian for participating in this webinar. Thank you, gentlemen.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Thanks.